Liners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good evening and welcome to a Boxing Day special of Tonight Live with me, Stephen Allen, in for the brilliant Dan Wootton. And we have a packed show tonight. Coming up over the next 2 hours, do we need to buy presents for kids too young to know what Christmas is? Is it okay to have a curry on Christmas Day? Are strikes killing the high street? Rishi Sunak causes a stir at a homeless shelter and the King's speech is dissected with David Starkey. Plus, plenty of chat with my brilliant panel, including a full paper review at 10:30. But first, let's get the latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Steve. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. Police say a young woman killed in a Merseyside pub shooting is not believed to have been the gunman's target. 26-year-old Elle Edwards was at the Lighthouse pub on Christmas Eve when the incident took place. 4 men were also treated for gunshot wounds. A search for the gunman is still ongoing. A 10th person has died as a result of an explosion at a block of flats in Jersey earlier this month. 73-year-old Kathy McGuinness died in hospital on Christmas Day. The blast, which happened on the 10th of December, destroyed a building in St Helier. An investigation is still underway. At least 55 people are believed to have died as a result of a severe Arctic freeze that continues to grip much of the US and Canada. Officials say 25 people have been killed in Buffalo in New York State, where temperatures dropped as low as -9. Across the US and Canada, thousands of flights have been cancelled and more than 150,000 homes are still without power. The UK's rail networks have been at a standstill today as members of the RMT union held strike action over pay. Hundreds of trains usually run on Boxing Day, but they've all been cancelled. 20,000 Eurostar passengers were also forced to make alternative plans as it cancelled services to London, Paris, Brussels and Amsterdam. And Boxing Day shoppers may have defied expectations, with early data suggesting that footfall has actually risen. Industry analyst Springboard say it may have increased by as much as half when compared to this time last year. follows concerns that the cost of living crisis, coupled with rail strikes, may have kept people at home. Earlier, Barclaycard said the average customer intended to spend 4% less than in 2021. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're watching GB News. Back now to Steve.
Welcome along to our Boxing Day special of Tonight Live with me, Stephen Allen. Coming up on tonight's show, buying expensive gifts for children takes away from the true meaning of Christmas, which is receiving gifts. I'll prove to you why the presents you bought for young relatives were the biggest waste of money you've ever made. Are we obliged to have traditional Christmas lunch? Well, apparently not. Some like to have Indian takeaways. Tonight, Sophie Cochran will be talking through her Christmas dinner decisions with chef and restaurateur Giancarlo Caldesi. And plus, football is back. After a long break, Premier League football returns following this year's World Cup in Qatar. We'll be talking through today's results with Matt Letitia, asking, can footballers indulge over Christmas? Boxing Day is well known for its sales, but figures have shown that this year's footfall is much lower than shoppers, with shoppers staying home. Are these the effects of the cost of living crisis, the rail strikes, or simply because the high street is failing? We'll get into that with social and political commentator Lizzie Zita. And with me throughout the show is my brilliant all-star panel of social policy analyst and writer Dr. Rakib Eshan, former MEP and political commentator Belinda DeLucy, and ethnographer and academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie joins me. But before all of that, it's time for my big opinion. Well, we've done it. We made it through Christmas. It's over. Any rows with the family are done and can be left to fester for just shy of 12 months. No more cards, no more crackers, and only 15 days left of eating turkey. We don't have to listen to any Christmas songs anymore, which is good. Wizards, I wish it could be Christmas every day. I got problems with that. At the end, the choir sings "When the snowman brings the snow." That's not how snow works. You need snow to have snowmen. The snowman doesn't bring the snow. It's not like a milkman. But the biggest problem with that song is the main premise. You don't wish it could be Christmas every day. That would mean that every day you have to give people gifts, and the shops would be never open for you to buy any. Sounds more like a festive stress dream. Do you think our obsession with gifts has taken the edge off Christmas? As a new father, many people have asked me, what did you get your little lad for his first Christmas? Nothing. He's 9 months old. He'll never know, unless he watches this back at some stage. But there's no way he could understand any of it. The best we could hope for is that he thinks it's annoying that I've been wrapping toys he wants to play with. He doesn't have object permanence at that age. So when he can't see something, he doesn't understand that it still exists. Every time you hand him a toy, he can't be sure it's not a new one. So for him, every day is Christmas. Now, I know where the buying of gifts for young children comes from in the Christmas story, but I still think a newborn doesn't have any need for gold, frankincense and myrrh. I'm a fully grown man and my myrrh use is still minimal. Buying expensive gifts for young children, it's not about the child, is it? It's about status, bragging rights, to look good on your WhatsApp group, to your friends, to show what you did. Meanwhile, all your baby actually wants for Christmas is you. And that's another annoying Christmas song, actually. There's no way all she wants for Christmas is one person. Mariah, come on. We've heard of your list of demands for your rider whenever you do a gig. If you require fresh puppies for your dressing room, you're going to be a nightmare at Christmas. But I don't even think the cliche of dressing kids up as Christmas puddings is a good idea. I didn't do that with mine. In fact, let's say that's my gift to him. Thanks to my inner Ebenezer, there are now no photos of my little lad dressed as Christmas food for him to be embarrassed about when he's a teen. You're welcome, son. Am I being too tight? In comparison to this person, yes. Comparison to the mum who was in the news for spending thousands on more than 40 gifts for her 2 children, one aged 3, the other 17 months. What a great way to help those children to grow up into entitled materialists who'll definitely be a nightmare to date. And I guarantee you, in the future, you can ask these kids if they remember that year when their mum got them a haul of toys so big it looks like she probably has compromising photos of Santa, and they won't remember. To be fair, some of the toys included a mini vacuum, a broom and a mop set, so maybe they're hoping that these toys will offset the need for a cleaner. And how did we know about this grotto's worth of gifts? Because she put it on Facebook. Of course you did. It's all about showing how good you are to your circle of friends, not to your children. Just get yourself a stock image of loads of toys, post that and spend some quality time with your kids. You'll have the same effect. You don't see me bragging about what I did over Christmas on social media. Nope. I do it the old-fashioned way, talk about it on TV. It's strange that we're lugging this obsession with money and stuff with us as we head into a cost of living crisis. I've tried to explain this to my son, that part of his Christmas gift was having the heating on, but he didn't seem too impressed. He didn't have the zero gifts this year, though, because he's got relatives who aren't like me. Some people bought him some gifts. He had presents to open on Christmas Day. But he couldn't, because he's 9 months. His little fingers can't get through the sellotape. And apparently, I'm not allowed to give him a knife to help. I mean, how am I meant to be a good dad if my hands are tied? But seriously, buying expensive gifts for babies is a total waste. The child doesn't care, and all you do is make shops busier for all of the parents with older children who can't escape the shopping hell. Let me know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. That's gbviews at gbnews.uk. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm going to turn this to my all-star panel, and let's have some fun. So reacting to my big opinion monologue tonight on my brilliant panel, Dr. Rakib Eshan, Belinda DeLucy and Dr. Lisa McKenzie. A couple of doctors in the house, so I'll be all right if I collapse. So coming up, the big question, the commentator will be talking about that in a bit, but the idea, let's turn to my panel, the idea of buying gifts for babies, it's a waste of time, isn't it?
Yes, well, I'm a little bit hesitant at judging parents too much, because I think everyone tries to be the best parent they can be, and it's really hard not to spoil your kids. But more the fool her. I mean, I used to wrap up bubble wrap for my 2, 3-year-olds. I sometimes recycle presents because all they love doing is ripping at the paper and just chucking whatever was inside it behind their shoulder. And we could, give them last year's Christmas presents the next year and they wouldn't even know. What kids remember under 10 is not presents or what you get them. It's the smell of the Christmas tree. It's family walks. It's kissing Granny's prickly chin. It's wonderful memories of Christmas. It's become a little bit too materialistic. And really, I do think it's about showing off rather than, what's best for the kid.
Yeah. Rakib, have you got any memories from that age?
If truth be told, no. I looked at the list of presents. I think the oldest child that she has is 3 years of age, so I don't really understand how a Nintendo Switch could be that useful. I think that's the kind of gift you'd provide your child, or indeed children, when they're a little bit older, when they actually have the cognitive abilities to appreciate and use those kind of presents. So I think for me, a little bit over the top.
Yeah. I mean, there is, I suppose, an argument that some of those gifts you could buy ostensibly for the children, but actually you just want them yourself. I mean, Lisa, is that a terrible move? Is it wrong of me to even have that thought, thinking Nintendo Switch, got my name written all over it?
Well, I mean, I've been looking over Instagram the last few days just because my Christmas has been quite boring, actually. My son is 34 and I didn't buy him a gift. He lives with me and his gift is he gets to be warm and fed this year. So, but I've been looking at people's Instagram photos and I think you're right. There's been just hundreds of people putting, these massive piles of presents. And I always think, what's going to happen? As the years go on, are you going to have to keep buying more and more every year to sort of make up for, we did this last year, you had 40 presents last year. When does this stop? And again, I'm a sociologist, so I think about this seriously. With the cost of living crisis, this really should stop, actually. It should stop because, next year, once the heating bills start coming in, people are not going to have the ability to do it. Most people won't have the ability. So I think, I don't know, perhaps they're doing the last hurrah this year and hoping, that this might be, the best Christmas ever because next year's going to be awful. But I do think that a lot of parents are going to set themselves up for fail for next year.
Yeah. Well, I think essentially it's almost like materialism is going to plunge people into an even deeper cost of living crisis, which I think they really have to be careful in terms of really, of course, you want people to enjoy Christmas in their own way, but there is that added layer of pressure, especially with the cost of living crisis, which means that people should try and be a bit more fiscally responsible.
I think as well, when kids when they start going to school and they start to, then start saying, well, I got this for Christmas and I got that for Christmas, there are going to be some kids that didn't get any of that stuff.
That's true. I think the best present that you can give your child as a parent is a stress-free, relaxed, happy mummy and daddy in no debt at all, not stressed out queuing for the latest toy, and also quality time. I mean, that's what children love about Christmas, is the attention and the family games and the board games. And you're making a rod for your own back if you start getting crazy presents for them when they're 3. What are you going to be getting them when they're 15 to keep them happy? So, yeah, a bit of a rod for your own back, getting them expensive
and
things.
Steve, I'll just make one more point. The people posting on social media platforms such as Instagram about all the presents that they've received, all the presents that they're giving to others, I think much of that should just be kept private. But I think what it really demonstrates is how that devil take the hindmost materialism has really taken hold in British society, and it's not something that I'm very fond of at all.
Or what Christmas is about.
Or you should keep it private, because you might get your house broken.
Exactly. We know which house, you've got to keep that kind of thing a little bit under wraps.
The idea of the safety thing about people, we were all told not to put pictures of our presents on social media in case people came around and nicked them.
Yeah.
A few of the parcels under the tree were actually from the cat litter tray, so if they did nick them, they did me a favour, they took it out of the house. But are we maybe missing the point about... We can be all very high and mighty and say, should be private, shouldn't be on social media, shouldn't be materialistic. But there is some endorphin rush about posting something that one-ups your friends. And I think that might be the bigger driving force here, Belinda.
That's not about the kids, though, is it?
No, that's the problem, isn't it?
And it's not going to make you more likeable with your friends either. So it's, how to make enemies, basically.
I mean, I remember the late 70s, early 80s. I was a kid then. And it was just when branded sportswear started to come in. And for the first time, some kids started to realise they didn't have the same things as other kids. And I think that has got much worse over the years. The pressure for parents to buy kids things because other families have got them. I don't think any of this... To be honest, I know we're laughing about it, but it's actually... If you're that kid that doesn't have the new Nintendo, it's, your life can be made pretty miserable.
And it can be a race to the bottom in poorer communities as well, to be honest.
And the amount of debt that people will take on, the loans that come around, payday loans. I mean, there is a real serious issue around this, actually.
Well, I make sure all my kids have a job as soon as they can, whether it's babysitting, waitressing, and they then save up their own money to get things they really want. And I think, in a way, that gives them a better sense of hard work, what you earn, the value of things, rather than relying on mummy and daddy to get you everything you've ever wanted. They have to earn it, they have to buy it. And Christmas time in our house is more little things. They buy their own things.
I think it's more satisfying when you own something that you've bought for your own hard graft, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we are talking about children at the age of 3.
That's true. Don't send them out to work at 3.
Hey, lots of houses still have chimneys.
That'd be illegal.
You know what I mean? But how do we solve it going forwards, though? Because if anything, it's going to get worse. As much as we can sit here this year and spot this trend of people showing off on social media, there's no undoing it now. The genie's out of the bottle, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why this is why it worries me about the families that can't keep up, the families that are not with all the will in the world. And does that mean they don't love their children as much as other people who's got everything? And I think when people's love for their children is shown through things that are given, I mean, that's quite dark.
But isn't that the parents' responsibility to bring up children who are grateful and acknowledge their parents' work? I'm in charge of how my children respond to presents. So if my children are sort of saying, I want more, or this isn't good enough, then that's on me as a parent,
But that doesn't help the kid in the class, that when everybody's going, what did you get?
It's a peer pressure, isn't it?
Yeah. What did you get? What did you get? What did you get? And, and that kid that didn't get...
It's true, but you can bring up children to be a bit resilient about those things. And I think the problem starts in the home. And I think if you can bring up children...
You can't make children be resilient to poverty. That's not their
Not poverty,
fault.
to peer presence in a classroom.
Yeah, what we're saying is that everyone should receive gifts of the same value. I don't think I've ever seen a panel on GB News be such a bunch of socialists.
Well, no, I think it's great. Look, parents can do what they like. Everyone's free to spend whatever money they like on their children. And I do think we're too judgmental on parents. They go through enough, waking up in the morning, feeding and taking care of, we've got to cut parents some slack. And it's so easy to spoil children, but I don't think that's most parents' goals, but I do think we need to focus on bringing children up to be, hardworking themselves and also very grateful for little things and for time with their parents rather than material goods.
I don't think that's what kids are. I don't think that's how they are.
There is that risk, as you say, about present inflation, effectively. I've always thought this with relationships. You don't want to go year one, don't go big with Valentine's Day, otherwise the rest of your life is hell and you will split up. I suppose you can't really split up from your kids, but if you're starting big when they're 17 months, where are you going to go to? You plot that as a graph. The price of gifts versus cost of living crisis. It's not going to end well for people, is it?
No, got to keep the same budget, I reckon, because you never know where you're going to be the next year. It's the same with birthday parties. Do you spend thousands on a 2-year-old's birthday party when they're never going to remember it? It's more for the parents than the child. And then where do you go when they're 16? A holiday in Barbados? I mean, this is the problem, the expectation for the following year. If you really overdo it the child the previous year, that's why you've got to kind of maintain a moderate, budget every year, so you can make it the next.
I think if you want to have bigger celebrations or have more extravagant occasions, it's probably better to do that with older milestones, like an 18th birthday or 21st, as opposed to 3 years and 17.
Yeah, that's true. The Sweet 16 thing was an American import.
I mean, I honestly think come March next year, when our energy bills triple, I think a lot of this is going to be taken out of our hands.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we're going to be, I think that next Christmas, there is going to be a discussion about children that have not had a Christmas dinner.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that. You can keep your thoughts coming through on that too. Coming up, the big question. Commentator Sophie Cochran and Giancarlo Caldesi lock horns over whether it's acceptable to have a curry for your Christmas dinner. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online, this is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Let's get stuck back in. And now it's time for this. Tonight, there are some Christmas traditions you can't do without. Stockings, mistletoe, sherry. But those are the details that pertain to a court case I've got coming up next year, so we'll move on. Of the traditions that we enjoy, the Christmas roast is surely at the top. So when someone messes with it, it can cause such upset. Political commentator Sophie Cochrane posted this on social media, a picture of her Christmas Day din-dins. She was going for a Christmas Day curry. The post has been viewed millions of times, such is the anger that this caused. Refusing to have a proper traditional Christmas roast may be an affront to all that is British, and I will make sure she is never allowed on this station again. Joining me now to talk about this is Sophie Cochrane herself and chef Giancarlo Caldesi. Let's start with Sophie. Explain yourself.
Well, you know, Christmas for me is about being able to eat whatever you want. So if you want to eat 2 Toblerones and a milk tray at 6 a.m, you do you, son. So for me personally, I want my favourite food. My favourite food is a curry. It has to be specifically the one from Tesco's, by the way. No other curry is permitted. And I just don't like roast dinner. I think roast dinner is gross. Not a fan of potatoes or any of the other stuff. And the only thing that really salvages it is the Yorkshires. So I've never eaten a Sunday roast dinner. I do not want to eat one. And I have a curry for Christmas. The rest of my family do eat Sunday roast, by the way, so we're not weird.
Do you not see there's a slight mismatch between you saying you can eat whatever you want and then you having a list of rules about what a Christmas Day curry should be? If there are some rules, just for one day out of the year, why don't you stick to them and have a proper Christmas dinner?
I mean, it's my personal rules for my curry of preference. I think the Tesco microwavable curry is the best curry. But again, my food opinions can't really be judged, as the internet have probably proved with their outrage of my curry for Christmas. But no, I think Christmas is to be enjoyed, and I just don't like roast dinner. So I have a curry for Christmas.
Well, as a man who knows his way around some food, Giancarlo, what's your take on this?
Oh, well, it's very shocking. I mean, I think what we tend to forget is tradition and what the food evokes our senses to really remember beautiful days, days that really matters to us. And obviously, a roast dinner well cooked is an amazing thing to have and also brings the family together. It's a different level altogether. And unfortunately, I cannot agree with the simple have a curry from anywhere you like. I mean, I found that very sad. The photograph there was very sad. It wasn't happy. It didn't show any intent of Christmas in any household in Great Britain. I mean, my Christmas time in Italy, my mum used to make a lasagna. Then we used to have a capo, not a turkey, is a large chicken, and then panettone. So I open a panettone, and immediately I go back 60 years ago with my mother. It's those things that are made out of a wonderful. You should feel that food brings you back to what you are, where you belong, and things you had when you were young. I can understand one day you can have something unusual because you have no time to cook it. But to say the roast is gross, I'm sorry, that's not right. Because you must have had some roast, which really, they cannot be cooked by I don't know, by who? You know,
yeah,
probably
Sophie,
by
if your roasts are worse than a microwavable curry, do you know what I mean?
I'm sorry.
It doesn't point to,
No, the rest
to
of
the
my
fact that you've had
family
good
eat
ones.
roast. I'm just really particular. I just don't like roast dinner. I love curry. My microwavable curry is my favourite food out of everything, by the way. Like this Tesco curry is
invite you
like
to
my
roast
favourite
dinner.
food out of
I will
everything.
invite you to have a roast dinner. I will invite you to have a roast dinner, if I may. So let's see, let's put it to the test and see what you really think.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm on this.
Honestly, ask the televisions to put us in touch. You come in and then say what you think. Because to me, this is, I don't say it's offensive by any means, but it really stirs me up. I feel very stirred up by it. I really do. And I believe in my abilities and I believe in what I do. And I believe that people, it's important the food that you have when you're a child and something done properly is so delicious. It's just, Christmas is not Christmas without sitting down with the family, having some dinners, which really makes sense. You know, you go bread sauce, you go cranberry sauce, you go your sausages, you go your turkey that is not too dry, it's done properly. One little dish, just put there nicely, and suddenly you're warm. You go everything around you with a nice bottle of.
Can I just check a couple of things? Sophie, is this a long con where you thought, I know, I'll post a picture of a curry and get some sort of top-notch free roast out of it? And if that's not the case, are you willing to admit that maybe you've just not met the right roast yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love curry, like the Tesco's curry. It's like my favourite food. And I think the most outrage of this post wasn't actually, if you read the comments, was the fact that I had curry. It was the fact that I had toast with curry. There was just such bitter outrage that I dared to have toast with curry, which is literally just bread but warmed up. And I'm like, I like toast. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I just love curry, and I think, yeah, it's I didn't expect to end up on GB News talking about having a curry for Christmas, but
You know what I think the problem isn't that you had toast. The problem isn't that toast is just warmed up bread. The problem is naan bread was staring you right in the face. You didn't pick it.
Very charming. I understand, but please, let me invite you to make your roast dinner for you and your whoever come with you, somebody with you. I'll make your roast dinner the way my mother used to make, and then we'll have the proper discussion. Because it cannot be left on its own. No, it can be. It's no. I'm sorry, I can't do it. You know, because I'm sorry. A curry for Christmas from Tesco. I'll have a curry from Caldesi restaurant. It's fine. I mean, come on, guys. This is not right. It just doesn't feel right. But
do you not feel, Sophie, that you are missing out on? Look at the passion that you see when people speak of roast, the Christmas roast. Do you not think that you're missing out on that? Maybe you're just not seeing the beauty. Just because you don't like potatoes, you ignore the potatoes, ignore the bigger picture.
I mean, it's not just it's just the whole thing, like meat with potatoes, with Yorkshire pudding. I mean, I don't really get the connection to Christmas because we have it every Sunday everywhere. Well, I don't because I don't eat it, but you know, it's Sunday roast. You have it every week, so why any different? I think the real killer on Christmas is the pigs in blankets for the starters.
I'm sorry. It's not every week. It's not every week. It's one important part of our lives. One day that you can really put something on the table, share it with your loved one, and then you say, wow, you know, it's memory. Go back to it's once a year. It's not that you do it like every day. So that once a year is those few things that you put on the table. There's good memories. It means pie with a lovely cup of tea. What's wrong with that? It's amazing. It's really amazing. You know, but honestly, you need to really bear with me and come with me for a day, 2 days, a week, and I'll show you how to cook it. And then you say, okay, I get it. But
you have to learn how to cook it. You don't just get to eat it. I see. Sophie, can I ask this, Sophie? You seem in every other area of your body of work to be the kind of person who likes tradition, who likes the way things used to be done and the values therein. I mean, we've been having turkey since the 1500s. That's the kind of tradition that you could link into and enjoy, and this one thing, you seem to break your own rule.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm Gen Z, so we do sometimes like to, you know, ruffle some feathers a little bit, and I typically do like some traditions. So my Christmas, you know, we have the stockings and everything else is done right. I'm very particular about my traditions with my family for Christmas, other than roasting up, because I despise roasting up.
I still think it's the case that you've not met the right one. Have you ever been to a place that does a roast dinner, or has it always been just one person cooking it for you, in which case we know who to blame?
Well, once I went to a Toby Carver and it was the worst place I think I've ever been. I'd rather frequent the McDonald's instead. But yeah, my mum does cook a pretty good roast. Everyone in my family raves about it. I'm just extremely weird, but I'm also the kind of person that only eats one type of specific curry and only eats one cake and do not like any other form of cake other than this one cake that I eat, which is a Tesco tray bake.
So maybe this is the issue, that actually you need to go on, was it Channel 4's Fussy Eaters? Maybe it's not about that it's an issue that you've got with food.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I just don't like roast dinner. It's very strange. And I think because I play football on a Sunday as well, my family, when we were kids, we used to have roast dinner quite frequently, and much to my despair. But as I started playing football, we used to play football quite late on a Sunday because we play away, and I used to get out of the roast dinner. So I think my despising for roast dinner has actually helped fuel my football career quite well.
That's all very well, but this is not the, as we've just been hearing, it's not the weekly roast. This is the once-a-year special tribute to all that those turkeys have done for us.
What's the difference between a Christmas dinner and a weekly roast?
It's a big difference. I'm sorry. Excuse me. It's a big difference. You cannot bring on the screen that you're going to have a specific curry from somewhere that is a big store or something else, and mentioning McDonald's. I'm sorry. That is not food. It really upsets me. It really upsets me. It really does.
Well,
I'm
this
sorry.
has basically been...
I'm sorry. I spent my life on writing books, doing things for people that really matter, saving people's lives, actually, is matter of fact. And food is so important and should be treated as such.
I think you've upset him now,
What
Sophie.
you've done, what you said,
Sadly, we're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there because this has somehow turned into the biggest row that I've ever seen on the telly.
And I'm sure you
Thank you to my guests. We will leave it there for you to scrap it out together online. Sophie Cochran and Giancarlo Caldesi. Thank you very much for that. Heated. All right, coming up next, following the break, for the World Cup and Premier League football then finally getting returned today with a set of fixtures, festive fixtures, which we will be looking into with the man himself, Matt Letizia.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Boxing Day is synonymous with sport, football, horse racing. Ironically, not boxing. Feels like they missed a trick. After a Winter World Cup and a timetable perturbation, your football is returning. But what's it going to be like? Well, let's chat footy with legend of the game, Matt Letizia, who joins me now. Hello there.
Good evening.
So we're back. What were the standout results of today?
Well, unfortunately for my team, Brighton had a very good win down at Southampton, which unfortunately I was at the match today, and my team were very much second best. It looks like Arsenal are going to take 3 points against West Ham this evening to extend their lead at the top of the table, which is pretty impressive, having gone 1-0 down in the game. And it was a huge win for Wolves at Everton, which took them off the bottom of the table, which unfortunately meant that my team dropped to the foot of the table, sadly.
Well, sorry to hear that. Do you think that playing on Boxing Day is a good thing?
I've got to be honest, in my time as a professional footballer, I really looked forward to playing on Boxing Day. I think the festive period was brilliant. I loved playing games, and so there's a lot of games condensed into a short period of time, and so we didn't do a lot of training, which was perfect for me. I just loved playing the game. So the more games, the better, and the festive period was probably one of the busiest periods of the year. So I always looked forward to it. Although training on Christmas Day was probably the one downside of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with it. The day that it lands on, surely we've just spent like 10 minutes rowing about roasts. Could you really get stuck into a good roast the day before you played?
I did. I think it was important to participate in the festivities properly. I didn't really partake in alcohol at all on Christmas Day, obviously with the game the next day. But yeah, I certainly still enjoyed my roast dinner. I probably moderated it a little bit, but probably not too much.
Yeah. Let me bring in the panel as well on this, because Boxing Day, I mean, it's a tradition, Boxing Day football, but is it something that you ever partake and enjoy? If we can ask my panel on this.
Oh, no, I mean, I think I love the Boxing Day fixtures. I mean, commiserations to Matt. Not the best performance from his team today at home to Brighton, but I think it's great. And I think even though a lot of people were saying that they were complaining about the World Cup that was recently held in Qatar being at this time of year, for the die-hard football fan to actually have the Football League season going on and then having the World Cup and then the Football League resuming so quickly, for the die-hard football fans, this sort of uninterrupted flow of football matches is probably quite welcome more than anything.
Can I just say I'm quite glad that Southampton lost today because I'm a Nottingham Forest fan.
Let's not have another fight on this show.
So,
it's already been a bit tasty.
What's the... Some things are good for some people, some things are bad for others. So I'm all right with that. I'm looking forward to watching Forest stay in the Premier League this year. It's been such an amazing thing for the city, Forest being back up. So
but thinking about this gap that's happened, and because it's if everyone was exhausted from playing a World Cup, that'd be one thing, or if no one was exhausted and had a big break, that'd be a different thing. But Matt, has this thrown some kind of curveball into the world of football, and now it could impact the results that we would have expected?
Yeah, I think it will have some kind of impact because it's never been done before. We've never curtailed the season to have a World Cup competition right in the middle of it, and then to resume the season, within a week of the World Cup final happening is unheard of. So I think it will probably have some kind of effect. We may not see those effects for a little while. But football's a funny game. You get funny results anyway, and there's no exact science that will tell you, oh, well, this result happened because, everyone was playing in the World Cup. Football's not like that, and sport's not like that. It's just unpredictable, and that's why we love it so much.
I was reading about some of the players coming back from the World Cup it used the phrase overweight, but I guess they don't mean the same kind of overweight that I might be after Christmas.
No, and definitely not the one that I am. I think, with all that's going on in the world today, it was a strange thing for him to come out and say. I mean, I'm surprised that he hasn't been cancelled from all media for fat shaming people. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of world we're living in. But it's just I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one for the rest of the season, because I think you'll have managers who will use this as a convenient excuse if their teams do suffer some strange losses.
Yeah. In terms of memories of what happened in the World Cup, Harry Kane turning stuff around, but there's a big part of the emotional, intelligent part of myself that thinks, how do you get over a penalty miss like that and go straight back to work?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I was never in a position where I missed one in the quarterfinal of a World Cup. Sadly, I did take a lot of penalties, and I did miss the one. I do remember being quite nervous when the next one came along. Probably more nervous than I probably would have normally been. So I don't know if Harry is going to feel like that the next time he steps up to take a penalty, where those memories come flooding back to him, and perhaps Spurs might pay the price for that. But I think he's a pretty level-headed kind of guy. I think he'll get over it. I think he'll still carry on scoring goals for the rest of the season, as Harry does, as he's done for many, many years now. So I'm sure he'll be fine.
Now, I'm trying to get a sense of my panel about who's keen on football, who loves the Schadenfreude and wants everyone else to fail other than Notts Forest. I'm getting that. But Belinda, what's your stance on... Are you a football-y person, and has the World Cup made you more of one? Are you tempted to enjoy a little bit of football now it's back?
I feel terrible because I've never been into football, but my kids are obsessed. So I love it when it's on the telly, because not only are there no fights for the time that it's on the telly, everyone's cheering, the phones are, tucked away somewhere, and it really brings everyone together. They have all their mates round. They've been doing it all afternoon today, and I thank football and footballers for giving me peace in the house and a joy between the four sisters and my husband, and we have mates around. So I think it's so much more than the game. It's really unifying, and it's the World Cup I absolutely loved, and I thought England played brilliantly. And as for missing the penalty, these footballers are paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to take the pain with the pleasure, with the stress, with everything that goes with the game. So they are kind of paid for that stress of missing it and getting all the criticism for doing it. But they're only human. We can't make them into gods. These young men and boys often are only human, and I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah. Matt, if you could get offered that money, would you go back and embarrassingly miss some penalties again?
I'd quite happily, I'd quite happily miss some penalties for $100,000 a week. Yeah, I'd be quite comfortable with that.
And have you felt that there's been more interest in football? Did this World Cup work?
I'm not sure it did. I don't think it had the same feel to it as you would do with a Summer World Cup. I think with the fact that the weather is normally a little bit better, I felt like the country as a whole didn't really get behind the team in the same way as they might have done with the Summer World Cup. You normally see plenty of flags hanging out of cars and all that kind of stuff. When we get to the quarterfinals, I didn't really get that feel from the country this time round in the winter. It was very different.
Do you reckon that's maybe because people, it's, as you say, winter, it's more of a stay in, keep the windows closed rather than open a window and put a flag out of it?
No, that's it. I think that's exactly the reason why. I think the summer has a great effect on people's mood. I think a lot of people are a lot happier in the summer. We've talked about seasonally affected disorder, and I'm sure that happens. And I'm sure that was probably one of the reasons why it wasn't quite as exciting for the nation as it should have been.
Yeah. Matt, thank you very much for that. Matt Le Tissier, a fascinating update in the beautiful game. Well, coming up next, despite 2 years of lockdown and the country gripped by strike action, footfall is rising. But what is the future for the great British high street? We'll see you in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back. It's a cliche of Christmas, but as a man of a certain age, you know you only get a certain kind of gifts. It's socks. Your loved ones, nearest and dearest, will look at you and they will ponder the question, what do they really want? And all they can come up with is, he's got feet, so he probably needs socks. Whenever I get socks, I'm furious. This year, I didn't get any socks. And I'm furious. I'm going to have to go and buy some socks now. But what's happening on the high street with expected shops being rammed on the lead up to the festivities? London's Oxford Street, normally a place that's really busy, but there were times when it was on the quiet side. But before Christmas, we saw reports of it being empty in areas. However, despite the cost of living crisis and national strikes, latest reports are saying that the retail footfall has actually, in fact, risen higher than expected. So we're hearing about the death of the high street. We've been hearing about it for ages. But is it the opposite that seems to be happening? What does the future hold? To guide me through this, I'm joined by social and political commentator Lizzie Zeta, who joins me. Hello. So what's happening on the high street? For years now, the death of the high street has been a headline that we always see, whether it's out-of-town things happening, drawing people away from the high street. But now we're hearing people, on a day when there's a strike on, actually going shopping. Talk us through it.
Well, in October of this year, we saw that there was the figures had gone up to sort of near 10% of what they were pre the pandemic. So that's a good thing. But overall, I don't see a brilliant future for the UK high street, unfortunately. I think, when you see shops like John Lewis turning towards the rental market and the property market, it's just not a good sign. And I'm really sorry because my parents always had retail shops. I know how hard it is. I know how the business rates, despite the fact the government are giving a 50% reduction up to, I think it's £110,000 in the business rates, it's still a very, very tough environment. And, please, everybody, go out and use the local shops.
Is it an issue of convenience, though? I mean, we always talk about the impact that online is having. Online is so much easier. The fact that you can press a few buttons, order something while you're on the toilet and it arrives the next day. How can a shop compete with that?
Well, the thing is, it is really convenient, but it's cold, it's soulless. I think what people want is an experience when they go shopping. They want to have a good time. It's a social thing. You go there, you meet friends, maybe you have a cup of coffee. You want to be entertained, maybe even educated. Look at the stores like the Apple store, which is such a successful store, and also Nike, the big Nike stores, where it's very, very reactive. They use an awful lot of technology, and it's just overall an incredible experience. Now, I know that obviously in the local high street, that's not so easy to do, but there are some stores that are very successful. There are some stores near me, local stores, a butcher and also a delicatessen that are really successful, and they are doing extremely well during these really hard times. And good luck to them.
Things like the Apple store. Isn't the Apple store slightly skewing things? Because surely most of the money Apple as a company makes, it's not from their shops.
Well, I think it's probably online, but the shops do need a presence because it's their brand. They are showing their brand. And I think you've picked up a really good point, because I think this is what will happen in the future, is that there will be a brand presence in the largest shopping centres, i.e. London, Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, etc., but there will be far more activity online, and the physical stores will be there to entertain, to meet people, to sort of show the brand off, to fulfil sales, click and collect, stuff like that. But there will be probably, I think, in the future, a reduction of the bricks and mortar stores. And also, we're seeing an awful lot of change of use from commercial to residential. A lot of these stores will be turned into homes, which maybe is no bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like your optimism in some areas there, Lizzie, but I look also at high streets that we go down, and they're not being changed into these experiential places where you can be entertained and educated. It's betting shops, coffee shops, and that's about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, I mean, I was thinking today that things that are on the rise are things like secondhand charity stores, nail bars, beauty shops, things like that. I think will always, and restaurants, certain restaurants will always keep going. But, we are really sick of, I agree with you, we are sick of the coffee shops, and it is extremely expensive, but we have to be optimistic, and we have to think outside the box. Local retailers, to me, are managing to do that. Not everybody, obviously, but it is possible to do it. And meanwhile, they need support. They need support from the government, and they also need support from the local communities. We need to use them, or they will go. They will not be there. We don't want the shopping high streets full of betting shops. Even the fish and chip shops are shutting down.
That's true. You can't order fish and chips while you sat on the toilet and they arrive the next day. You probably can, actually. I hope I never find out whether you can. Lizzie, thank you very much for that. Social and political commentator Lizzie Zeta. Well, we have reached the end of the first hour, but don't go anywhere because we have plenty to come up after the break, including Rishi Sunak causing a stir at a homeless shelter, the King's address to the nation with David Starkey, and my panel's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass special festive version. All of that and more, all still to come. We'll see you in 3.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Tonight Live with me, Stephen Allen, in for Dan Wootton. A big hour coming up for you. Was Rishi Sunak's trip to a homeless shelter just a publicity stunt? We'll go over to the King's Christmas address with our analysis of that. The papers hot off the press, and my panel's greatest Britons and Union jackass. But first, let's get the news with Ray Addison.
Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. And in breaking news in the last half hour, 2 people have been arrested in connection with the fatal shooting of a woman in Merseyside. 26-year-old Elle Edwards was at the Lighthouse pub on Christmas Eve when she was shot by a gunman. Police say they do not believe she was the intended target. 4 men were also treated for gunshot wounds. A man aged 30 from Tranmere has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. A woman aged 19 from Rock Ferry has been arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder. A 10th person has died as a result of an explosion at a block of flats in Jersey earlier this month. 73-year-old Kathy McGuinness died in hospital on Christmas Day. The blast, which happened on the 10th of December, destroyed a building in St Helier. An investigation is still underway. At least 55 people are believed to have died as a result of a severe Arctic freeze that continues to grip much of the US and Canada. Officials say 25 people have been killed in Buffalo, in New York State, where temperatures dropped as low as -9. Across the US and Canada, thousands of flights have been cancelled and more than 150,000 homes are still without power. The UK's rail networks have been at a standstill today as members of the RMT union hold strike action over pay. Hundreds of trains usually run on Boxing Day, but they've all been cancelled. 20,000 Eurostar passengers were also forced to make alternative plans as it cancelled services to London, Paris, Brussels and Amsterdam. And Boxing Day shoppers may have defied expectations, with early data suggesting that footfall has actually risen. Industry analyst Springboard say it may have increased by as much as half when compared to this time last year. It follows concerns that the cost of living crisis, coupled with rail strikes, may have kept people at home. Earlier, Barclaycard said the average customer intended to spend 4% less than in 2021. We're on TV, online and on DAB Plus Radio. This is GB News. Back now to Steve.
Hello, welcome back to the Boxing Day special of Tonight Live with me, Stephen Allen. Coming up in the second hour of tonight's show, we'll make you cringe with Rishi Sunak's out-of-touch comments to a homeless man at a shelter he was serving hot meals to. We'll be dissecting this with my fabulous panel. Yesterday, His Majesty King Charles paid tribute to the late Queen, his mother, in his Christmas speech. The King made history by being the first king to have made a televised address at Christmas to the nation. We'll talk through this later with Dr. David Starkey. At 10:30, we'll be having a sneak peek at what the headlines are happening for tomorrow's papers, for those bank holiday papers. Stay with me up until the end of the show. Under contractual obligation is my brilliant all-star panel of political commentator Belinda DeLucy, social analyst Rakib Essam, and academic Lisa McKenzie. Welcome back. 4 weeks. For weeks we've been saying that we haven't seen much of our current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. At least he was Prime Minister when we started the show. We should get someone to check on that, surely. But he finally came out of hiding and did another awkward thing. He was helping to hand out food at a homeless shelter and he was speaking with one of the men there, a homeless man, and he asked him if he works in business. Oh, the cringy moment. Well, let's turn to my panel for this one. And what do you think? Are we harsh in judging Rishi Sunak for that conversational faux pas? Let's go to Belinda.
No, we're not harsh at all. He's showed so many times that he's completely out of touch with the British public. You know, he is an elite. He's right in that upper 1%. He doesn't know how ordinary Britons live, never mind people who are homeless. I don't know, do you remember the car debacle when he was putting fuel in a car that clearly wasn't his and he didn't know what to do there either? I think I'm over him. I'm over him. Let's have another one.
But is the important thing having a Prime Minister who knows how to fill up a Kia, or a Prime Minister who understands how the financial systems work?
Yeah, he don't understand how homelessness works, though, does he? Which is actually quite important. When we are the 6th richest country in the world, yet we've got millions of people who are living either in insecure housing or no housing. So, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give him any of that. You can't understand an economy if you don't understand how the poorest people are living, and he clearly doesn't. Like I said, I'm over him. Next.
Is anyone willing to defend we being harsh in the
What I would say about Rishi is that I think he's a good man. I think he means well. He seems very kind, very sweet, but he is not suited at this time, at this place, to be Prime Minister of this country. The Prime Minister's job is the most powerful, important job in the land. He needs to understand the consequences of his policies, and also he needs to be a little bit more politically savvy. For a man who is supposedly, super intelligent, he's got no clue how to communicate with the ordinary man and woman on the street. He's made so many little mistakes that seem quite innocent, but just reflect that he has no idea how the other half live whatsoever. And the question is, for Rishi, is if he wasn't in politics, can you imagine him working and helping out in a soup kitchen? And I think for me, it's a definite no. Often it's those who have suffered poverty themselves who are the most charitable, who do things like that in soup kitchens. If he's never understood poverty like, a lot of people in this country, how can he understand how to talk to a homeless person even? But I don't think he's a bad person. He's just the wrong Prime Minister for now.
OK, well, if that was the defence of Rishi, let's see what happens next.
I said he wasn't a bad person.
Well, I suppose that's something. Ricky, look, in the build-up to this, I was asking, is this a PR stunt? But even if it was a PR stunt, it's a bad PR stunt.
Well, if it was a PR stunt, it's backfired spectacularly. I don't necessarily believe that you have to have experienced poverty or live a life of deprivation in order to come across as genuine in that kind of situation. I think that former Prime Minister in Boris Johnson would look far more at ease in that kind of situation. He has a fairly privileged background. Eton educated. I just think that Rishi Sunak has form, if truth be told. There was a clip that emerged during the Tory leadership contest where he was talking about different types of friends that he has, and he said they had working class friends, but not working class friends, which didn't come across very well at all. During the Tory leadership contest, when he was talking with Tory members in Royal Tunbridge Wells, he was bragging about rearranging government funding formulas, which is rediverting funds away from deprived urban areas. And I just think that tells you that I feel that his political instincts especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, which is about to get a whole lot worse. I think he, in a way, we were talking about Liz Truss being at electoral disadvantage for the Conservative Party. I'm not sure that Rishi Sunak is really that much
Liz Truss,
better.
I thought, had so much more character than Rishi.
Really?
Yes, she
Well,
was
that's saying
flawed,
something, then,
but
isn't
it
it?
is.
That's
So
saying
much more
something.
character. She at least said how she felt, and yes, she made gaffes, but they were funny, and she had no filter, whereas...
I think people were laughing at her.
Wow.
Though. That's not what you want, you know, that when you're trying to tell...
That's true.
I think what I'm trying to say is you've got to have a political narrative, and particularly in these times when people are really struggling, is your political narrative has got to sort of be empathetic to that. And I don't think that Rishi Sunak, I think he may have empathy, but I don't think he's got the political narrative. And I think that's a problem for him. And as we move on, like I said, at the end of sort of the winter, when the bills start coming in and it really starts to bite, the Prime Minister or the leadership that the country will need is someone and something that has a story and an understanding of just what's happening in the country, and I don't think he's got it.
I don't think he needs experience actually to have experienced poverty, but it shows that I don't think he's been around helping in any charitable way or necessarily doing one-to-one with people of different classes. And that, I think, a Prime Minister needs to have. He should have prepared much more for the role, because I think he was preparing for it a long time before he was made Prime Minister. You know, the Ready for Rishi thing, I think, was in the bag for a long time, and so he should have had a better PR team. He needs a refund or sack his PR team, because they're giving him terrible. This PR stunt was so clearly cringeworthy. He looked so awkward and out of place and very shy, and it didn't do him any good. So I don't know who is paying.
If you're in that kind of setting and you'll be talking about financial markets instead of food inflation, then you're bang in trouble politically.
Yeah, but he really didn't know his way around that fried egg.
Isn't this the problem?
I know, did you see how he slapped off?
That's what I'm saying the most, was it? Isn't it the problem, though, that for some reason we're treated like children, that we need these press moments with Prime Ministers? Like when a flood happens, we send a Prime Minister with a mop. Why are we falling for the narrative that a Prime Minister should be helping out with the mopping? They've got other things to do, haven't they?
No, I'm not saying that they need to be sort of mopping stuff up. I mean, I remember Boris with his broom, which was ridiculous. But what I'm saying is people need to trust that our politicians have an empathy with their situation. And so far, Sunak, he's not coming across as having that empathy. So when the help with the energy costs come to an end in March, are people going to think that he is cruel? And I think that's the question. You know, rather than being inept, are they going to start to think, well, actually, this guy is so rich, you know, he is cruel rich.
Well,
but I don't think being rich is the problem.
We have to move on, I'm afraid, but it's worth saying, you know, does Rishi Sunak understand the plight of the poor? He is the poorest person in his own marriage. So, coming up next, legendary royal expert David Starkey joins me to dissect His Majesty the King's first Christmas address to the nation. Don't go anywhere. We're back with you in a few minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. It's the focal point of festive TV. No, not the inevitable row on EastEnders, but the King's Speech. Historic for many reasons. The first time it's been delivered by a man for decades, the first since the passing of our Queen. The King's Speech was viewed by more than 10 million people. And you don't get figures like that these days if it's not a talent show final. Well, for some analysis of this record-breaking royal broadcast, I'm joined by historian Dr. David Starkey. Hello.
Hello, Steve.
Hello. How does this one sit with you, this broadcast?
Right. I've got two answers. Which would you like? Do you want the Christmas jolly answer, or shall we do a bit of thinking about it?
Let's do the Christmas jolly answer.
Or would you like both?
No, let's do the proper thing.
Well, the Christmas jolly answer is this was completely in the spirit of what his mother did. It looked beautiful. It sounded perfect. The carols were pretty. The views of, attendant members of the royal family, like satellites around the son of King Charles, were well done. It made approving noises of not simply Christianity, the star in the floor of the church at Bethlehem where Christ is supposed to have been born, and King Charles, then he was Prince Charles, having been there, and then neatly segueing to the mosque, to the temple, to the synagogue. All of that was beautifully, beautifully done, and it was mind-numbingly not dull.
Yes, I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of people might have said that they'd watched it, enjoyed it, but left it not feeling impacted by it. Not like some of the previous years that we remember. The performance seems like a harsh word to use, but the performance of the late Queen always hit it note perfect.
Sometimes it did. We remember the ones, of course, at moments of crisis. I mean, that's like the famous one with COVID and so on. Those are the ones that we remember. I mean, can I now do what I think is my real opinion? I found it uncomfortably like a Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis ad. You felt this is not just guff, this is royal guff. You were talking brilliantly now, dare I say, about the Prime Minister's performance. Why do we need to see him with a mop? And there's a terrible danger that the monarchy is just going to flow down the general stream of unthinking, unreflecting, beautifully produced PR. Now, that's what it starts to look like. I think there's also something else that's very dangerous about that speech, which quite a lot of people have picked up on, but it's worth thinking about a bit more, because it's, in one sense, it's completely part of the tradition. When Prince Charles drifts, King Charles, drifts neatly from religion to service to a notion of the public services to the NHS and the emergency services, queue strikers. In one sense, it's completely traditional. In another sense, it's a very clumsy taking of sides. And we are in a different world from what we used to be. The public services, whatever they are, no longer enjoy an unchallenged position. For example, don't we, Steve? If you cast your mind back to COVID, one of the great challenges was, were we going to have food supplies? Now, we need food just as much as the NHS. In fact, it's only because we've got food that the NHS isn't even more overwhelmed than it is now. But the people who supply food, they are called public service workers. People don't go out and bang pans for them. They don't demand 15% pay increases. But you know what? They do the job a damn sight better, and with very much less fuss. In other words, we're at an age, we're at a point now, it seems to me, of inflection, where things are changing. And there's a terrible risk that the monarchy is going to find itself either floating or on the wrong side of the changes. If you cast your mind back to the beginning, we're talking now about the anniversaries, right? This is the 70th Christmas broadcast, going back to 52, the anniversary of his mother, when she did her first. It's actually the 90th, when George V did his first in 1932. Now, that was a great age. That's an age of the threat of radical socialism, the rise of the Labour Party and whatever. And the monarchy played and democracy, all of those things that were totally alien to monarchy. And the monarchy, the King George V in particular, he plays an absolute blinder on it. The whole way of the reinvention of the monarchy as a national English monarchy rather than German royal house in 1917, the invention of, again, rewards for public service, the Order of the British Empire in 1917, with its first inauguration ceremony, not in the pomp and circumstance of Buckingham Palace, but actually in Hyde Park football stadium in Glasgow. It got it absolutely right. It incorporated it without claiming to share its values.
But David, if I could just ask a question, though.
Sorry.
So in the first part, you say that we're at risk of it becoming overproduced PR, the royal family becoming overproduced PR. Then later in the paragraph, we hear the worry is that they're too politicised in comments that could be linked to taking a side on issues. It feels like there's not a lot of overlap between those two situations. Either you're so produced that you couldn't possibly be saying something that would be upsetting, or you're saying upsetting so you should have been produced more.
No, I'm saying that I don't think, and so you're misunderstanding, dare I say. I was talking about the production values, the glitz, the gloss, the perfection of the performance, of the setting, of the ecological Christmas tree, of the perfectly in tune but not too perfect Christmas carols, all that stuff. I'm not talking about the content. The content, I felt, was not thought, whereas almost too much attention had been devoted. You realised a week had been spent thinking about that blue suit, the tie and the pocket handkerchief. At least a week had been spent on that. I reckon about 5 minutes had been spent thinking about the text. The text was just pulled out of an old cupboard with nobody thinking about it. They're going to have to start thinking. He is going to have to start thinking. At the beginning of his reign, the accession speech, the accession council was seriously good. This was off-the-shelf stuff. Charles, do better. He only got a marginal second degree, remember. I'm speaking as an old Don. Come on, Charles, pull your finger out, do better, think harder, we'll take you more seriously.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that, historian Dr. David Starkey. Well, coming up, we've got tomorrow's papers at 10:30. You will not want to miss that. We'll see you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:30 p.m. Time for the papers. So time for a look at tomorrow morning's newspapers. Hot off the press. First, let's look at the Telegraph. It goes with energy companies hoarding customers' billions. This is about a way in which they've been using the direct debit payments. It also has the headline, Gove has designs on return to traditional architecture. Next, we move to The Guardian, revealed the dire state of the broken rail network, which you may well have noticed if you tried to use it today. We then go to The Mirror. Xmas gun horror at pub is their main story. She was just so happy. Friends tell of Elle's last moments as two arrested. The Independent goes with a story. What does the UK really think about strikes? Comment and analysis goes into our opinions on what's been happening. The Eye has 2/3 of junior doctors are trying to leave the NHS. And the Sun also goes with the shot dead at pub on Xmas Eve, light of our life. And those are your front pages. Let's talk about panel. Let's talk with my panel about those headlines now. So we can go to, let's take a look at the Daily Telegraph. And energy companies hoarding customers' billions. This is a shocking amount of money that's being kept here. Anyone else noticed? This is about the the direct debit amounts that they take out in comparison to how much you actually spent?
I think the energy companies are particularly acting quite badly, actually, over this cost of living crisis, because, yes, they are upping people's direct debits to make sure that they've got the money, but what they're also doing is they are forcing people onto prepayment meters as well. So I think there needs to be a national and public discussion about what the energy companies are actually doing, because I've said it a few times tonight, but it's playing on my mind. What happens when the government's support is removed at the end of March? What's going to happen for families that are struggling now, but also people who perhaps are benefiting a lot from that £60 a month, you know, when it's removed and the direct debits just shoot up? Because if you've got a direct debit, it's, you know, unless you cancel it, you've got no control over it.
Yeah, Ricky, well, let's try and square this impossible circle. What should be done? Because if everything gets more expensive and some people don't have enough money, who fixes the problem in the middle?
Well, I think we've got a very serious problem, but I think what we need to talk about is the regulation, more generally, of the energy market and also the behaviour of energy companies. I think I've read multiple reports now which suggest that major energy companies are not behaving in a socially responsible way. So we do, of course, these are ultimately, these are ultimately companies. They may well operate, as private sector organisations. But you have to understand that if they don't behave in a socially responsible way, that will have a direct impact on people across the country, especially people who are vulnerable in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
I'm surprised energy companies haven't made more out of the optics of being good to their customers, of doing better with the PR for energy companies at the moment, because it's not great, but everything's about sort of a corporate image, and they haven't thought about how they can play a part in seeming and looking charitable and concerned and good customer relations.
And one thing I will say, the energy companies, if they don't get their act together and they don't behave in a more socially responsible manner, I think a potential Labour government could be quite bold when it comes to nationalisation in this particular sphere of British life.
I'm not sure that the Labour Party we have at the moment would be quite bold, but I think that
this would be the time, though, if they wanted
but I think there would be a public debate and a call for them to be privatised, because they're not acting in the spirit of the cost of living crisis, are they? I read somewhere a few weeks ago about 100,000 court orders has gone through the magistrates' courts where they're forcing people onto prepayment meters. That is not socially responsible, is it?
No, it's not.
Second time tonight, this panel's been basically a bunch of socialists.
I certainly don't want to scare energy companies off, I think, but I do think now is the time. God, if their image isn't great at the moment just because of the whole cost of living, they could have done a little bit more just for themselves. Like if I was their PR team, or what, I would do something, do a few PR stunts even, but they've nothing.
Because normally the argument is people talk about water as a utility and you can't swap. What are you going to do? So they can increase the amount of money and it's not really a fair market, whereas actually you can swap when it comes to energy providers. But at the moment, even Martin Lewis ends up saying there's no point swapping because everything's too expensive. So it almost feels like they've bunched together to decide to not act nicely, because if they all act equally badly, there's some sort of Mexican style.
Ultimately, my understanding of privatisation is that it gives rise to multiple competitors and that will help to keep prices in a controlled manner for the consumer.
Capitalism isn't working, is it?
Oh, it is.
The third time tonight.
Hang on a minute.
Capitalism isn't working, is it?
We need to invest in and attract more people into the energy supply chain and domestic supply chain.
In many ways, we've got a broken economic model. Now, this doesn't call for mass nationalisation, but we need to talk seriously about robust regulation of particular markets. At the moment, we don't have that.
Well, let's move on to The Guardian and see what we can make out of this. Revealed the dire state of broken rail network. I mean, obviously, today, a strike day. I would have got the train in, so sorry, environment, sorry, Greta, but I did have to drive. I mean, the rail network, even when it's not on strike, still causes some people some problems. How are we going to fix the situation we're in?
When has it ever been any different? For decades of our trains, we can't even do anything in this country just simply and effectively. You look at Germany and Japan, they've got all their rail working perfectly. Why can't we just get it right in this country?
OK, I'm going to make it... This is going to make me sound left-wing again, but I think in Germany, you have parties of the right and parties of the left. They generally agree on the sort of social market economy, where they have this model where government works closely with business and trade unions, for the general
And
economic
Spain
betterment of
as well.
society, and in other European countries as well. Well, I think in Britain we have an economic model which is more based on confrontation and adversity, especially between the government and trade unions.
But we have much less strike days than Spain, France. I mean, we have a very few strike days in this country compared to a lot of our European friends.
Perhaps we should have more strike days then. Because
no, that's not
But at the moment, it's very clear that the number of strike days being taken at the moment has increased in recent times.
Aviva a few weeks ago got a massive bonus from the government, and yet they're one of the worst run networks in the UK. I mean, if you ask anybody from Manchester about what they think about their train network, which is Aviva, and yet they're still getting bonuses from the government.
The tricky situation, surely, is we need trains. But fewer people are using them. It's a COVID hangover that
It's
people work from home.
expensive.
But we need them to run, because you can't just end up having fewer and fewer trains. There is a critical point at which you have a sufficiently small number of trains, which means you don't have trains anymore, because no one's going to use it. It happened with buses. Back when my dad lived in St Ashfield, they turned one of the bus routes into one a week. Well, that's not a bus.
Yeah.
You just get to watch something going around. And are we risking the same thing if we don't keep the rail network not suiting the amount of demand that it has, but the amount of supply that we need?
I think we should do a Ronald Reagan, what he did in 1981 when the aviation staff all went on strike because they weren't getting enough money and conditions, this, that and the other. And he sacked the lot of them when he made it illegal for them to strike. And he sacked them, about 11,000 of them, and then trained the military very quickly and other members of staff to take over the jobs. They did it much more efficiently. And actually the aviation, the flights kept going and the public weren't harmed. I have much less sympathy for our railway workers than I do for the nurses. So I think I have a huge amount of empathy and support for the nurses. The railway workers...
That is somewhat reflected in the survey data as well.
I'm sorry, but
British people's support for particular workers can differ based on the sector that they're in. So you see for ambulance staff and nurses, the majority of British people actually support the strikes. For the rail workers, it's a bit lower, and for driving instructors, it's very low.
Well, the border force, I'm like, strike on, you're doing a great job.
You've sufficiently brought back the right-wing points as well, by the way. You've gained some
Not
points.
me.
Yeah, not you.
You knew we had it in us.
To the Mirror, then, and this story. She was just so happy. Friends tell of Elle's last moment as two arrested. It's another heartbreaking story in the front of their newspapers.
Such a tragic loss of life.
Yeah.
And it shows that even though we're a country where, compared to, across the pond, we have very strict gun controls, we still have very unfortunate incidents involving firearms, so...
I suppose at least this story upsets us so much because of its rarity. Whereas this story in America, I don't want to seem heartless, but it wouldn't be their front page.
That's a fair point.
I would say, I don't think it is that uncommon. Like, Liverpool seems to have hit the headlines quite a lot recently with these kind of random shootings, trying to get one person but shooting another person. I don't know if it's the same here, but, there've been more and more shootings in Liverpool since lockdown finished. And I know Liverpool as a port has had a problem with firearms coming in and coming out and has lots of drug gangs. Again, it's probably not related to the Cape, probably, I don't know, but it is becoming a little bit more frequent, don't you think, in the news? Gun crime in Liverpool?
Still only fewer than 10. It's still like single-digit cases, whereas in America, that probably would be the space of a week or two that you'd have this level of shooting.
I remember when in Nottingham, we had a similar issue where for about 4 or 5 years, there was a lot of guns, a lot of shooting, and a lot of discussion around sort of guns and drugs and gangs. And what it came down to really was poor policing.
Yeah.
That's what it actually came down to. It was the police that had almost lost control of the city, and it was poor policing. So I think the problems that probably Liverpool has got at the moment, I think some of them could probably be laid at the police's door. Perhaps they are not policing this particular situation that they've got more, adequately.
But one thing that does tend to happen in the UK is that we do react to these situations. Handgun laws were brought in after one event. So, again, just to compare, it seems like we're picking on America here, but that tends to not be the way that they deal with it. We hopefully have a better way of
Let's
doing
hope we're never immune to this. This always has to be utterly shocking and heartbreaking. And I believe she was with family at the time in the pub, and it just on Christmas Eve, everything is just a massive tragedy. And I'm just so desperately sorry for her family. But you're right, it has to stay shocking.
Well, let's move on to, I mean, The Independent talks about what we've covered there about our opinion of the strikes. I was going to ask about that, how not only is it the various strikers have different approval ratings effectively, I wonder if Christmas has been the changing factor, because before then, the train strikes had some public support. There was a lot of public support there, but there is something about attacking Christmas rather than attacking workers on their way into work that might sit differently with people.
I think it's a possibility, but I still think that even despite the fact that we've seen various forms of industrial action over festive period, I still think that in certain sectors, I think especially when it comes to nurses, and ambulance staff, I think that there would be at least a plurality, if not a majority of British people still being broadly supportive of those strikes. But
don't you think it's cruel, though, to choose the Christmas period when they could have chosen any period leading up to it, August, September? I mean, nurses have been underpaid for years. Railway strikers, if they had an issue, they could have done it at a time that didn't cause so much hurt and destruction to
I have got an
families.
issue with this cancelling Christmas thing. I've really got an issue with this, because I remember 2 years ago, 3 days before Christmas, Boris Johnson cancelled Christmas. Do you remember when Boris Johnson cancelled Christmas? And he really cancelled Christmas. He said no one is going anywhere. But this year, Mick Lynch, they've got strikes, and he's he's the Grinch. So I've got a real problem with this cancelling Christmas. Christmas has not been cancelled. I was on Oxford Street today, and Boxing Day sales have definitely not been cancelled. It was absolutely heaving. So.
Visiting families,
Steve, I'll make this point, that when it comes to managing industrial relations, that is a key government responsibility. So when you have government officials, I mean, blaming the Labour Party, Labour haven't been in government for 12 years, right? That when it comes to managing the strikes, handling these negotiations, we have to ask questions of our government, if truth be told.
Yeah. We don't have to travel too far topic-wise to the front of the eye. 2/3 of junior doctors are trying to leave the NHS. Which I suppose is not too far away from discussing why there might be some nurse-based strikes. I mean, we need doctors. This is the opposite. This is the opposite of what we needed.
And even worse, this is coming at a time where so few medical places at universities are offered to British students. I think something like only 15% of British students are getting places to do medical degrees. So we're reducing the amount we train, and we are scaring the doctors off that we already have here. I know of a doctor who went off to Australia because he just found the NHS too much dependent on goodwill. And we need to invest in a domestic workforce, stop relying on foreign labour source to keep wages low, to keep working conditions minimal. We need where's all the nursing training colleges and doctors' colleges?
Well, we had the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition, which slashed nursing bursaries no end. And that was a very bad move.
It was a bad move.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that. I think in particular cases, yes, we can find talent and try and attract talent from other parts of the world into the NHS, but our priority should be training people, British citizens, to fulfil important roles in the National Health Service. At the moment, we don't do that.
We don't do that.
You know, the problem is time. Because it takes at least 7 years to train a doctor, but your government's in for 5 years.
But
Steve, sorry to interrupt, but the Conservative Party, they've been in government for 12 years.
But you only ever think about that term, don't you? The term you're trying to...
Well, that's the problem with our short-termist culture more broadly, isn't it? That is a problem,
That's a problem with politics and politicians.
Yeah.
That's not a problem with... I suppose the will of people to want to be doctors, or the goodwill of the British public for the NHS. That's about politicians thinking short-termist and thinking about votes. And I honestly think that, I remember 7 or 8 years ago we were discussing this. This was exactly the same thing we were discussing eight years ago, and here we are still discussing it. We could have trained those doctors in that time. Yeah. So, how long are they going to keep kicking this into the long grass?
But how can we train them if we're not educating them? How can we act as like this beacon of light to the world when we're stripping poorer nations of all their medical staff and leaving their hospitals empty to come and serve our, NHS, which is so morally wrong? I have no idea why the Conservatives conservatives aren't investing in a domestic workforce and paying them. They spend millions on diversity, inclusivity, directors, all this rubbish. Such a waste of money, and they could be paying our nurses and doctors all those millions.
Putting people in the House of Lords, and making them billionaires. They spend lots of money on that, don't they?
Exactly.
Michelle Moan.
Also, I will say, just to clarify my point where I was saying the issue is time, I was saying the politicians should raise their game. We shouldn't train doctors in less than 5 years. You don't want someone who's watched all the episodes of House and thinks they can have a
Grey's Anatomy.
you don't want any of that. And then finally we can look at the front page of The Sun, same story, but again, heart-moving. Shot dead at pub on Christmas Eve, light of our life. They also have in the top corner, sales glee as Brits splurge. There was worries that the footfall would be down, but it looks like, for some reason, it's changed. It's difficult to work out. It's definitely a strike day, and people were saying strikes were putting people off shopping. Why have people gone out and shopped today?
Sales.
Is that all it takes?
This first day of the sales was on sale.
And again, I've got a problem with that. I mean, I've got a problem with that because I've come to London, I'm from Nottingham, so I thought I'd go and have a look on Oxford Street. You could not move. It felt frightening, actually. It felt really frightening. And then I looked in the shops and thought about all them poor people who's got to work, people in retail. It's like, come on, give them 2 days off at least.
But I think it's great they get to catch up a bit from being almost destroyed during lockdown. These are their kind of golden days where they can build back a little bit of their losses. But it is hell, it's suffocating.
But if you work in those shops, if you're working and you've got to come in on Boxing Day...
that's life. I mean, we all have to do a bit of work.
No.
On bank holiday.
I think people in retail are treated really badly in this country. And I think giving people 2 days off together at Christmas should be at least something that we could do. Would people still come out tomorrow? It'd be the same sale, it'd be the same first day of sale. Does it really matter if it's tomorrow or not today?
I think Lisa makes a good point about employment protections, especially for the retail sector. But I think I also agree with Belinda's point that a lot of these businesses, they have suffered under the pandemic, so they need days like this where they can cash in, because that might help their longer-term financial sustainability and to retain their staff, and potentially, maybe, hopefully, give them a pay rise in the future.
You're sitting on the fence, and that's my job.
You're going to accuse me of being left wing. I'm trying to bring a bit of sense to the table, mate.
Time for another break now, but when we get back, my hard-working panel will be revealing their Great Britons and their union jackasses. We'll see you soon.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Well, it's time to reveal today's Great Britain and Union jackasses. Let's see who my panel have nominated. Ricky, we'll start with you. Who have you nominated for your greatest Briton and why?
I nominated King Charles III. I thought that his Christmas address was wonderful. Even though I'm a non-Christian, I thought the strong Christian dimension to the speech was very welcome. But in doing that, following up from that, he also acknowledged the fact that we are a multi-faith society, talking about the great work that not only churches but also mosques, gurdwaras, mandirs and synagogues do, especially when it comes to feeding the hungry and their social value. So I thought on the whole, it was a very inclusive address, but did have that strong Christian core, which you'd want ultimately from the Supreme Governor of the Church of England.
But surely you knew that was always going to happen. Years ago, he spoke of wanting to be the defender of the faiths.
Yeah, and he also referred to Britain as a community of communities, but it was nice to see that in his first Christmas address as the head of state.
Yeah. You never for a second thought he wouldn't follow through on the promise, though.
Well, I think the delivery was good. I think the delivery was good. I mean, I disagree a bit with David Starkey as well, where, you know, I think that in a way it was quite clever of the King actually to refer to the NHS and the armed forces. Traditionally, the NHS is seen as a kind of subject of left-wing admiration, while the armed forces is seen as a subject of right-wing admiration. I actually think that's very reductive. We're talking about two institutions there with the majority of British people, especially when we're going through an era where there's a great deal of institutional distrust. These are two institutions which just remain fairly well respected by much of the mainstream.
OK, we can move on to Belinda. Can you tell us who you've chosen?
I've actually chosen King Charles III as well, because I have to say, you know, I was expecting perhaps kind of a woke lecture on environment in there somewhere, and, you know, I also felt like he was in a position of having to fill unfillable shoes, like no one can compete with the Queen. There's a huge amount of pressure on him, and I think he did a stellar job. Yes, it was short, no, it didn't rock my world, or, you know, I didn't feel the grass move under my feet or whatever. It wasn't, you know, deeply impacting, but it was the first King's speech since 1951, and I think he's a great public speaker. I think he's, you know, the monarchy is wonderful, but you never know what king or queen you're going to get. We've had bad, good, ugly, you know, ones through history, but it's not. It's more the institution that I think people feel obsessively protective about, like I do. But I think for a king, King Charles did a great speech, and I have to give it to him this
Can I just check you're OK with the stood-up delivery? Because people were very excited about this. It wasn't sitting down at a desk, actually stood. There was a slight criticism, I suppose. Someone said that if he would have said the words "Welcome to Songs of Praise," it would have been in keeping. Do you know what I mean? It was filmed in exactly the same kind of way.
So true. I think if he'd have said "Let them eat cake," it would have been.
Well, now let's see, Lisa, who have you chosen for your Great Britain?
It wasn't King Charles.
No?
It was Terry Hall from The Specials, who, oh, look at him there, who died last week. And I think he's a Great Britain because in the 1970s, when the National Front, the BNP, was rising, Terry Hall and The Specials were a multicultural band that was singing against racial hatred in the country. And also, they were number one with Ghost Town, and they were talking about all the things that we are sadly talking about today. City centres being hollowed out, poverty, people being hungry. And so I think Terry Hall is a Great Britain. And I think we should... I'm very sad that perhaps more people on political shows are not recognising him for his politics as well as his music.
I think it's easy to forget what it was like then to see On Top of the Pops, a multicultural band, whereas now actually we're so used to it you forget what a trailblazing move that was.
Yeah. And also what they had to do, you know, before they, you know, in the middle of their sets, when, you know, they were going around the country and, you know, in rough pubs, they were having to get into the crowd and kicking out the National Front, kicking out racists. And they did that, you know, so, and I think his music, the politics of the 1980s, unfortunately, are still prevalent today. And I think he, you know, sadly died last week. And I think he's a Great Britain.
I think I played some of those gigs you mentioned as well. Didn't stand up there. So as your greatest Britain, by the looks of it, you've chosen King Charles. Let's see.
I haven't.
No, it's mathematically, not just...
This is a democratic...
Do you remember democracy? I'm sure it got mentioned earlier this evening.
Well, if we had democracy, we wouldn't have King Charles, would we?
He has no power, man.
And a king. Yeah. Let's see who my panel have nominated for their Union Jackass. Now, for Union Jackasses, Raki, what have you got?
I went for Prince Harry. I watched the whole docu-series. I think You know what? My main problem with it is that he's sat there, and then you have so-called experts contributing to the docu-series, peddling mistruths. For example, the Commonwealth is referred to Empire 2.0. I mean, listen, the Empire is about imperial coercion. The Commonwealth is a voluntary association of nations. It's not the same thing.
And even nations who weren't Britain's colonies have decided or asked to join because it's such a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And I'd make the point as well, in the Commonwealth, you have influential members such as India and South Africa that don't necessarily see eye to eye with the UK when it comes to foreign policy, especially Russia, Ukraine, interestingly. And then you have China has gained a foothold in many Commonwealth member states. So I think that is really not Empire 2.0. But I think more broadly, I didn't really like the commentary. I'll try and be quick with this. Referring to the royal family as somewhat outdated, it has to catch up with diverse, modernising Britain. You see with the King's Christmas address, very pro-diversity, and that actually follows on from much of the late Queen's fantastic work when it comes to interracial dialogue and the fact that she tried to reach out to Christian non-Protestant Christian denominations.
And he walked Meghan down the aisle. I mean, they loved her when she came into the family. So
yeah, I'm not a fan of Prince Harry, so that's all there.
If you don't like to believe everything you see on Netflix, you wait till you watch The Crown.
Oh.
Yes.
But Linda, who's your Union jackass?
I had to be Rishi. I can't get around the fact that he's our Prime Minister and he is behaving like a bit of a wally, and there's no need to. He's too clever for this. Not just his gaffe with the homeless guy, but he decided not to do a traditional Christmas message as well, which I thought was a little bit badly advised, just because why would you make a decision not to do it? I think, again, he was trying to do a bit of a stunt with our nurses and NHS and do a message to them instead of wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. So I don't know who's advising him, but he needs to stop listening to them and, I don't know, put polls out to try and get some idea of what the public want from him, because he's clearly not thinking, you know, himself very intelligently at the moment, with a lack of political savviness that's beyond.
I love the idea that whoever's advising him would have had a meeting where they said the sentence, yeah, billionaire giving food to homeless people. What could go wrong?
Yes,
and we found out what went wrong, didn't we? That was interesting. And Lisa, your nomination?
I can't remember which one. I said two. I said Rishi Sunak. Did I? Oh, yeah, I said
It looks like you said Rishi Sunak.
Yes, I did say Rishi Sunak, but I also wavered a bit on Michelle Moon as well.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, I know, but I kind of went for Sunak just because, again, he's awkward. He's not he's got no warmth. He desperately wanted this job. Desperately wanted the job, and then now he's not delivering what he said. He said, the grown-ups are in charge. Well, where is he?
It's like that poem where all the kids are going around, I want to be the leader, I want to be the leader, can I be the leader? OK, guys, so what should we do?
He was a bit Mr. Invisible before the PR stunt at the show.
Well, that's the thing. Which would you rather have? The complaints about Rishi not being around, or complaints that he's around and he's asking homeless people if they run business?
Well, ideally you want someone who's moderately around and somewhat relatable.
Well, what I would like to see right now is someone... We have said more about the energy companies tonight, the three of us that politically don't agree but agree on social issues. We have said more than Rishi Sunak has said in the last 2 months.
Maybe there's a reason he's been kept quiet, and that's why he's been quite invisible. I mean, I haven't seen him up in the north or in working men's clubs.
He's not coming up there. He's not going up.
He likes Davos.
Well, to wrap that up, then, it looks like the winner of your Union Jackass has to be Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll win some more in the next year as well. It's not a final thing. So, plans for the new year. Look, we've almost, as John Lennon said, another year over, and what have you done?
Well, I'm doing my onesie on the sofa. When we've all got matching onesies, I'm keeping all my teenagers firmly in the house and not letting them outside for New Year's Eve, because the parties they go to at the moment are a little bit crazy, and I haven't really made them streetwise. So we're all going to watch films all night with popcorn and then do a little bit of balloon action at 12. Is that exciting or what?
Didn't expect that at all. Thank you very much. Sorry we didn't get to find the full plans for everyone's there.
You don't want to know mine.
Yours will be much more exciting.
Stay with us, because we'll be reviewing the newspapers on the way next when we do Headliners. Don't go anywhere. See you in a few.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK will see a cold and frosty start for many, but turning wetter in the west. Here are the details. A cold and icy start to Tuesday morning across northern Scotland, with sleet and snow showers, turning cloudy as rain and hill snow arrives from the south, turning windy too. A wet morning across Northern Ireland with brisk winds developing. The rain could be heavy at times, leading to some tricky travelling conditions. Cloud amounts increasing through Tuesday morning across northern England, the wind picking up too, icy stretches around first thing as the cold air lingers. A cloudy and damp morning for Wales and the Liverpool Bay Area as rain moves in from the west, the rain turning heavy as the morning progresses. Temperatures rising after a cold start. A patchy frost across the Midlands Tuesday morning, but temperatures quickly rising as clouds spread in from the west. The risk of rain arriving as the morning progresses, with the winds increasing too. A cold and frosty start for many across East Anglia tomorrow morning, with some morning sunshine. Cloud amounts increasing from the west as the morning moves on, with rain arriving later. A chilly start to the day across southern England, with the best of any morning sunshine in the east. Clouds increasing as the morning progresses, turning windy too, with rain later. Wet and windy weather will continue eastwards through the day, with snow falling over Scotland. Temperatures on the mild side for many.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We